Thanks. Can you hear me? Thanks. I'm really glad to be in Krakow. So I'm coming from Warsaw, and I found people in Krakow to be quite friendly. And I really like that. So before I talk about the topic, I wanted to give a background about which was already given. So I started being an AI researcher way back in 2003 as an undergrad student. And this was one of the first projects I worked in Germany on soccer playing robots. And since then, I went on to work on various topics, started my PhD before dropping out after the first year. And what I realized, how do I go to the next slide? Okay, you see technology. I don't know how to use it. Okay, cool. So what I realized when I was doing my research here, being a researcher, that I have to be connected with people. I believe that technology has to have an impact, a social impact. And I was not able to do things, research, which I couldn't see the social impact of that. Okay. Okay. Is that okay? Cool. So, okay, coming back. So because of that, I ended up being an entrepreneur. And today's talk is going to be one of those applications of AI which I think has a huge opportunity and the potential to has a big impact on society. So the topic is basically predictive analytics for human behavior. The idea is how can we predict how someone would behave in future. My goal of this talk is just to make you think, and I hope at the end of the talk, if you are able to think about this topic, I achieved it, which I don't think is a very difficult task, given, like you all are here, so it's easy. I also want to say that it's a lot of the things that I'm going to talk is my personal experience, my startups, but also as an ongoing work, because AI is a very evolving field, and especially this field is quite an evolving field. So prediction, it's, as we all know, it starts from, I don't know, centuries old. This is a picture from China, I think early 20th century, and it has been in different cultures, different countries. People have always been fascinated by predictions because, we want to know about the future. That's great. I don't know if anyone can tell what this thing is. I presume no. It just is. So this is one of the machines also were starting to do predictions. So this is one of the first earliest prediction machines, an analog machine, which was trying to predict tides. It was early 20th century or some mid of 20th century. So we have always been either trying to predict humans as well as build machines which were trying to predict. But what happened? Like, what's the difference now? Why is such a, what's the difference now? And the thing is the amount of data. Now we have data about every person, whatever they're doing, where are they going, what are they, like everything, what are they eating, where are they shopping. And there was a study I read that the amount of data that is being generated now in 2 years is more than all of data that was generated before 2003. So that's the kind of data that is being generated. So that gives a lot of power to know about people and perhaps predict about someone's behavior. So I will actually then again, I will give you a few cases and I will talk about those cases. Before going to those cases, I just wanted to ask a general question to you guys that, sorry, I did, okay. If I just say that you guys get to know about the prediction and I'm saying that, okay, I'm building a system or there are systems that get to know you and will predict about your behavior, whether that makes you feel good or bad. And how many of you think it's bad? Oh, quite low, actually. I was trying to move the bad to good, so I think, well, I already succeeded, but I still will go on and giving the talk. So now, okay, my goal is that to show that there are actually very good use cases that gives a good reason that why prediction is something that could change societies and help societies. The first case is a startup that I was one of the founding members. It's a startup based in Belgium. And what we did at the very basic level, we had a mobile app, which was acting as it was using the sensors in the mobile device. It was collecting the data. And then we were based on those, we were giving everyone who was driving the car, we were giving them 4 metrics. There was speed, the acceleration, the brake, and the mobile usage. And then we were scoring at the end of the drive that, okay, you scored 8 points or 9 points, whatever, and you went from point A to point B. So that was a basic algorithm. And then we gamified the whole system by saying, if you drive well, we get a free coffee, or if you drive well, you get a free whatever. So, and we are trying to change the behavior of people. That's great, and we did end up actually accumulating data about people. We had almost more than 3 million kilometers data. And we had data about people like from all things. We had people that what they drove, when they drove, where they went, how were they driving. We knew about their personal details. We knew where they live, what is their email ID, what is their age. And we had the engagement. We knew that what they liked, because once they got some rewards, they were also trying to buy something or use something. So we know what they like, what they don't like. So it's all great. So we had a lot of data. Now, why do we, and by the way, I want to go back, and we actually also saw that people were actually, just by gamification, just by pure gamification, people were actually driving better. So they ended up, if you take a 3 months period, we actually saw that the risky drivers went down and the bad, reckless drivers also went down. And there was an overall increase in the excellent driver. Okay, that's all great. Now, why do we need prediction? And why do we want to predict anything? Although this is really interesting, but the problem with a lot of insurance companies and in general is that when we went to them, they said, we don't just want to know who is driving bad, who is driving good. We actually want to know who might cause an accident, because when I know someone might cause an accident, then I can kind of increase the premium. Okay, so how do we know that someone might cause an accident? The problem is even more difficult because 80% of the people who cause accidents are first timers. So it's not like you have a past record of accidents, so we know, okay, you could cause an accident. Okay, so is it possible to just use the data that we have and think about someone, whether we could predict that that person will do it? It turns out to be no. I actually was talking to a psychologist, and he said, from that data that we had, and trying to understand who could cause an accident is like finding a needle in a haystack. Like you can't, because someone drove bad once, or someone just drove bad twice, doesn't mean that the person will cause an accident. Okay, so how can we then, the question was, how can we find out whether someone would be causing an accident? So then also, while trying to find out, we saw that there is something called social norms. Now, we as humans behave in a different way in the society. One simple example I will give you, it's a real example. There was a group of lawyers who were asked that will they give their consultation at a reduced price of $30 an hour? Almost everyone says no. And when they were asked, will they give it for free? Everyone said yes. The reason is that when it comes to society and then they are in a group, they behave in a different way because of the group pressure. So they started behaving in a different way because of the group and the group they are in. Now that's a very relevant information. Because once we know that someone is in a certain group, and if the group is as a whole is driving bad, and the person is also driving bad, then I think that then we can quite say that the risk of the person being in an accident is much higher than if the person is just driving bad, but in a group of people who are driving good. And that's an assumption in a way, to be honest, but that was based on certain studies and the facts done in past on psychology. So I'm sorry, this doesn't work, but basically there was a picture, it's just because I think it's a PDF. So what I here wanted to show that what we did was we used unsupervised learning. Now, let's say these are the two, I wanted to just show that these are, let's say, the two axes. The down axis shows the score on the speed score. That means if you score high, that means you are driving well. And let's say it's an acceleration score. So if you have a high score, means you are doing it well. Now, and let's say the greens are the friend networks of the same person. So all the greens are in the friend network, and all the reds are in the friend network. Now you could see some people in the red who are driving bad, but they are not in the cluster of the good driving people. So even if the red, let's say in the leftmost red, is driving bad, but he's in a group generally who are driving good. So the risk of that person being in an accident is much less. While a green guy with much better score than the red, perhaps, or almost the same score as the red guy, but he's in a group who are generally driving bad, has a much more likely than being in an accident. So this is basically what we found. As I said, it's ongoing research, and it's kind of, the company was later on taken by IMOB, which is a Belgian research institution. But that we saw that to understand being in a prediction, and if you want to predict people's how some accident or something can happen, you have to take into account not just the data, but you also have to take into the action the social demographic or the social network that the person has. And this is actually also used by many startups around, especially in the US. So I just wanted to conclude that we can potentially predict people with a higher risk. And what does that do? Is actually is why this has a benefit to the society. Because as a young people, most of young people have a very high car insurance premium, simply because they don't have a record. So the insurance companies increase the premiums. So and even if you're driving well, so that's why these kind of things will help us to identify who is a good driver and who could be potentially in a risk, can cause an accident, and who not. And hopefully this kind of information could end up actually removing accidents, because if you could then gamify the system and reward the person by changing the behavior, then you can end up, really perhaps improving the roads. So the second use case is about healthcare. It's the same thing. It's a startup based in that I was working in UK, and there's something called remote healthcare monitoring system. So people are monitoring their health regularly, and they just want to, and if there is some problem, then they go to a doctor, or that you could monitor people. Now the question is, can you take from there and predict that someone has a high risk of being in a heart attack or some other kind of health hazards that the person, although doesn't have? How could you do that? And here again, what you have to do is a bit different learning. I don't want to go in details of those learnings, because I think the previous speaker did speak briefly about reinforcement learning and unsupervised learning. Now, unlike the previous type of case, where if you are driving bad, you have to take into account the social norm. In health is a time series based data, because what it means that your health depends on how was your health yesterday and the day before yesterday. So it's not just based on an instant moment, but it also depends on your previous health. So in these cases, we had to use something called reinforcement learning. LSTM, which is supervised learning we used on a neural network, which is RNN, where basically here what it does is the state, a given point of time, the output is not only depends on the current input, but also depends on the previous state. So you are using the previous state, could be the yesterday's health data, and then you have today's health data, and you're trying to predict tomorrow's health data. And now we had all of those data, so we're trying to predict that can we sufficiently predict that this person will have a worse or a better chance of having a health hazard based on this kind of learning algorithms. This is the conclusion in here, is that we can potentially identify people with a health higher risk, and then perhaps gamify and do some behavioral changes to make the improvement in the health of those people. So these are the two cases which I told you, which is a kind of ongoing work, where there is a solution that's being worked out, not only by us, there are many other startups doing that. Which, I think an approach is almost all of them are kind of similar approaches. The third use case, I took it because this is a company that in India came to me, and I don't know the solution. I just wanted to put it out for you guys to think, if you could. The problem of loans. So normally, if you come from a rich family, it's easy for you to get a loan. In a Western society, I don't think it's a problem. Let's say in a poorer country like India, it is a problem that banks will not give you a loan if you come from a poor country, because typically the 97%. So people coming from a poor background doesn't have or doesn't get loans. Now that company wants to solve that problem. They want to actually reduce that 97% rejection to 30% rejection. But the problem there is none of the previous approaches would work. Firstly, because there is no social data about these people. These people are not on social network, they are not on Facebook, they are not on LinkedIn, they are nowhere. So we have almost no data about their social status or their information. So how to solve this problem? I don't know, so I'm just kind of putting it out. But if this problem could be solved, you could actually potentially change drastically education systems in countries like India, because people now can take loans and go on higher educations, which is quite important. I gave you 3 use cases, and there are plenty of use cases on the prediction aspect. There is on sales and marketing, and every domain is kind of in the sector, people are trying to predict who will buy, who will not buy. I just took these cases which I think are most relevant for social impact. However, all the algorithms and that neural networks and everything that people are using now, we all agree that there has to be 3 basic attributes, and not only us, this is also a paper came out, that they should be accountable, they should be transparent, and they should minimize the risk. Because if these are making impact on your lives, if it's changing your life, how your premiums will be, how your loans will be, you need to know whether. To most people's surprise, actually, the current algorithms often are not. And there was a paper that came out called Ethically Aligned Design by IEEE. It was last December, 2016 December, that came out. And they said most of the AI algorithms are kind of black boxes. People don't know why certain things are being happening. It's just kind of, you put some inputs, you put something, but you cannot really prove those. They are not really accountable. So, that's something that as people interested in AI should think that there's a lot of opportunity to basically rethink on things that are being happening now, and things, algorithms that are being used. So I actually wrote an article some time back is about why do we need to rethink about basically the whole AI approach to future.